This Geometry Mosaic in 2-color stitch is a decently involved stitch here. Okay, it's a stitch pattern and it's a mosaic crochet technique. I'm using the pulled and dropped loop method in order to use 2 colors and change color every single row, but not have to cut my yarn every single row. So there's a few things going on here, and if you just take everything one step at a time, you will be able to do this. The geometry stitch pattern is worked over a multiple of 28 stitches plus 3. So I'm just going to do 1 repeat. So what I have here is 31 stitches. Okay, and I am going to start off. As you see, I have just a base row of 31 single crochet. That's just the base row. It's row 1 on the pattern, and it's just so I have something to work into. And now I am switching to my first of my 2 colors, color A, which in this case is this purple. Okay, and I'm going to chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to single crochet in each of the first 2 stitches, and then chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the next stitch across until 1 stitch remains. So we're going to chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the next stitch, and keep doing that. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the next stitch. Keep doing that until there's just 1 stitch left. Okay, here we have 1 stitch left, and you're just going to put a single crochet into the very last stitch. So you start with 2 single crochet, you end with 2 single crochet, and everything between that is a chain 1 single crochet. All right, here we have the end of row 1. For row 2, I'm going to first put the stitch marker on the end of the row 1 loop, and now I'm just going to put a slip knot in my second color, in color B, on my crochet hook. Now I'm going to turn my work, and then with color B, in this case my green, I'm going to put a single crochet in the very first stitch. Okay, here we go. Ta-da, single crochet in the first stitch. Now here's my repeat section. I single crochet in the next stitch, and then I'm going to work behind this chain 1 space and single crochet into the stitch that we skipped. When we were working row 2, we skipped this stitch, and so now I'm going to actually make a double crochet in there. Now I'm going to make a single crochet in the next stitch. This is my repeat. Single crochet in the single crochet, and then double crochet behind the chain 1 space and into that stitch we skipped. And keep doing that across until there's just those 2 single crochets left. Single crochet in the next single crochet, and then double crochet behind the chain 1 space and into that stitch we skipped, all the way across until there's just the 2 single crochet left. Now there's just the 2 stitches left, and I'm going to single crochet into each of the last 2 stitches. Okay, now here we go. There you can see our completion of row 3. Now we're going to take the stitch marker, remove it from the color A, and move it on to color B. Then we are not going to turn. We're going to put our hook into the color A loop, and then we're going to slip stitch into the very first stitch of the previous row. Okay, we're just going to slip stitch in there, and then chain 1 and single crochet in the first stitch. Okay, maybe, there we go. Now here is our repeat section. We are going to back post double crochet around the color A stitch that's 2 rows below. So a back post double crochet, we come in from the back and we wrap around the post. This one's a little difficult because it is only a single crochet that we're putting our post stitch around. So back post double crochet around that stitch, okay, and then chain one, and we're skipping one. So we're skipping the next stitch and we're going to back post, we're going to repeat that. So back post single crochet around the next color A 2 rows below, chain one, skip one, and keep on doing that. You're just putting a back post double crochet around the next color A stitch 2 rows below, and then chaining one, and then doing the back post double crochet around the next color A stitch 2 rows below, chain one, skip one, and going to do, oops, I missed my chain one, and you're going to do that all the way across. So I've done this back post double crochet around the color A stitch 2 rows below, chain one, skip one, and now I just have my last 2 stitches left. So once again, I'm going to back post double crochet around the color A stitch 2 rows below, but instead of doing a chain one, skip one at the very end, I'm going to single crochet into the very last stitch. That is the end of row 4. Now we pull that loop out, and we do this at the end of every single row. We pull up the loop of the color we're working on and then switch the stitch marker from the previous color to the color we just finished, okay? So I turned and put my hook back into the color B loop. I'm going to chain one and then slip stitch, chain one, and single crochet into the very first stitch. There was my slip stitch, my chain one, my single crochet, and now I'm going to chain one and skip one. So I'm skipping this post stitch. Now here is our repeat section for the row. We back post double crochet around the color B stitch 2 rows below. So here's my color B stitch 2 rows below, and I'm going to back post around it, okay? So you can see I go in back here. All right. And from the front, we're going in back here. There you go. Back post double crochet around that. Chain one, skip one. Now we're going to front post double crochet around the color B stitch 2 rows below and chain one, skip one 13 times. Okay, so front post double crochet. This one's even easier. See, we just go right underneath there. Front post double crochet, chain one, skip one. That's once. Yeah, oh, yeah, there's my chain one, skip one. That's once. Again, front post double crochet, chain one, skip one. So you will always work color A into color A and color B into color B. We're going to do that front post double crochet, chain one, skip one 13 times, and then we repeat that if you have more. This is just a single repeat that I'm doing, but if your piece was longer, you would repeat it by doing the back post double crochet, chain one, skip one once, and then the front post double crochet, chain one, skip one 13 more times, and keep on doing that until 1 stitch remains. I have my 1 stitch left, and I'm just going to put a single crochet in that last stitch. Okay, row 5 is done. Now we switch our stitch marker. For row 6, we do not turn. We put our hook back into color A, chain one, and then slip stitch, chain one, single crochet into the first stitch. Now for the rest of row 6, we are going to do our repeat section. Okay, so now the rest of row 6, this is our repeat section. We will back post double crochet around the color A stitch 2 rows below, chain 1, skip 1 2 times. So back post double crochet around the previous row of color A. Whoopsie. Twice, so chain 1, skip 1, and back post double crochet around the previous row of, around the stitch on the previous row of color A, chain 1, skip 1, so that was my twice. Now we will front post double crochet around the color A stitch 2 rows below, chain 1, skip 1, 12 times. So now front post double crochet around that color A stitch 2 rows below, chain 1, skip 1, front post double crochet around that color A stitch 2 rows below, chain 1, skip 1. We'll do that a total of 12 times, and we'll keep doing that. The back post twice with the chain 1, skip 1s between, and the front post 12 times with the chain 1, skip 1 between. And then we'll do that until there are just 2 stitches remaining. I have finished that repeat section, and now I've done this last front post double crochet, chain 1, skip 1. Now I'm going to do another back post double crochet around the color A stitch 2 rows below, and then place a single crochet in the very last stitch. All right, and let me show you that. That is the end of row 6. So let's move on to row 7. We switch out our stitch marker from color B to color A. And now since the loop we need to work is on the left, we're going to turn, and you can see, I think by now you could probably do this without me telling you anything. I think you've probably figured out the pattern here, right? So we have our hook back into the color this is color B yarn, and we will chain 1 and then slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet into the first stitch. Slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet into the first stitch. Now chain 1, skip 1, and now it is time for our repeat section. We will place a front post double crochet around the color B stitch 2 rows below. So this is this is the stitch we skipped with our chain 1, skip 1, and now we are going to place a front post double crochet around this stitch right here. Okay, and chain 1, skip 1. All right, now that was the beginning of our repeat section. So the front post double crochet around the color B stitch 2 rows below, chain 1, skip 1 was the beginning of the repeat section. Now we're going to back post double crochet, chain 1, skip 1 11 times. Okay, so now back post double crochet, chain 1, skip 1 11 times. That's 11. Now front post double crochet around the color B stitch 2 rows below, chain 1, skip 1 2 times. So now the front post, chain 1, skip 1 twice. Front post, chain 1, skip 1, front post, chain 1. Chain 1, skip 1, and that is the end of our repeat. So now we would do the front post once, then 11 of the back posts, and then 2 more front posts, all with the chain 1, skip 1s between them, and do that until you get to the point where there is just 1 stitch left, and we single crochet into that very last stitch. There you go. This is a wrong side row, and that is row 7. For row 8, we first switch over our stitch marker. You can see we do not have to turn because when we switch colors, our hook is at the right side of the piece. And as usual, we chain one. Now, when you're doing this, if you find you don't need that chain one before the slip stitch, chain one, single crochet, you certainly don't need to put it there if you don't want to. Slip stitch, chain one, single crochet into that very first stitch. Now to continue row 8, we front post double crochet, chain one, skip one twice, front post around that same color stitch, 2 rows below, chain one, skip one, front post around the same color stitch, 2 rows below, chain one, skip one, back post double around the same color stitch, 2 rows below, chain one, skip one, back post double around the same color stitch, 2 rows below, chain one, skip one. I'm going to do that 10 times. That was only 2. Okay, now we move on to our front post double crochet around the same color stitch, 2 rows below, chain one, skip one 2 times. That was once, and here is twice. Now we just have these 2 stitches left, and we are now going to front post double crochet around the color A stitch, 2 rows below, and then single crochet into the very last stitch. There you go, still a wrong side row, and that is the end of row 8. Row 9, we switch our stitch marker, turn our work, put the hook back into color B, chain 1, and then slip stitch, slip stitch, chain, single crochet into the very first stitch. Then chain 1, skip 1, and now we are on our repeat section of row 9. So back post 3 times. So let's see. Sometimes I kind of have to look for that very first one. 1, chain 1, skip 1. 2, back ones are definitely harder to find. Chain 1, skip 1, and I didn't actually do my yarn over. There we go. And 3, chain 1, skip 1. Now we have 9 of the front posts. So front post, chain 1, skip 1. That was 9. And now the back post 2 times. So back, chain 1, skip 1. Back, chain 1, skip 1. There is 1 stitch left, and I will single crochet into that very last stitch, and that will finish off row 9.